Welcome back. My name is Eric and this is D&D Original Character. Today we're looking at the question, how many concentration spells can you have going simultaneously at one time? The answer to this question is pretty straightforward. It's just one concentration spell. The rules are pretty clear on the matter that when concentrating on a spell, you lose that concentration if you decide to cast another spell which also requires concentration. So you lose the first concentration spell in favor of the second. But for today's build, we're looking at different ways around this rule to see how many concentration spells and concentration-like effects or spells that we can have up at one time. For our class, we're going to have 17 levels of Wizard and 3 levels of Sorcerer. Generally speaking, spells that require concentration are powerful options, so stacking up these abilities should create a powerful build. Let's start with our race. For this build, we are going with the Aarakocra race. The defining feature of this race is its flight ability, which grants us a flying speed of 50 feet as long as we aren't wearing medium or heavy armor. This is our first concentration-like ability, as normally the fly spell, which is a 3rd level spell, requires concentration for 10 minutes. The Aarakocra, however, they're able to fly using this innate concentration-free flight from 1st level. This alone makes Aarakocra one of the strongest races in the game, even with the limitation on the different types of armor that you can wear. Next, let's add our class and subclass. For our class, we're going to be a wizard all the way to level 17. We'll use our 7th level spell to cast Simulacrum to duplicate ourselves. We're going to avoid the infinite Simulacrum loop, just because that gets kind of out of hand pretty quickly. So Simulacrum gives us a double who has all of our spells and features just without our equipment. Then we'll both use our 9th level spell slot and our Simulacrum's 9th level slot to cast Foresight. Foresight is the best buff in the game and grants us advantage on attacks that we make and disadvantage on attacks made against us, along with some other great riders. This is similar to the Greater Invisibility and Shadow of Moyle spells, both of which require concentration. However, Foresight does not. So this is another concentration-like effect that we get without having to use our concentration. For our wizard subclass, we'll choose the Chronergy subclass. So Chronergist wizards are arguably the strongest subclass of wizard, and therefore arguably the strongest subclass in the entire game. One of the many reasons why Chronergy wizards are so strong is their Arcane Abeyance ability gained at level 10. Let's see what it says. Arcane Abeyance. At 10th level, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of 4th level or lower, you can condense the spell's magic into a mote. The spell is frozen in time at the moment of casting and held in a gray bead for 1 hour. This bead is a tiny object with an AC of 15 and 1 hit point, and it is immune to poison and psychic damage. When the duration ends, or if the bead is destroyed, it vanishes in a flash of light and the spell is lost. A creature holding the bead can use its action to release the spell within, whereupon the bead disappears. The spell uses your spell attack bonus and save DC, and the spell treats the creature who released it as the caster for all other purposes. Once you create a bead with this feature, you cannot do so again until you finish a short or long rest. To summarize, we can condense the magic of a 4th level spell or lower into a tiny bead. We can then give this to an ally who can use its action to release the spell using our attack bonus and DC, but it's the creature who has the bead who effectively casts the spell. A couple of notable exploits arise from this feature. First, to cast the spell that's stored in the bead only requires an action, even if the spell itself has a longer casting duration when being stored in the bead. This means ritual spells like Leomund's Tiny Hut, which normally take a minute to cast or 11 minutes to cast as a ritual, can be cast in a combat as an action. I would recommend against using Arcane Abeyance together with Tiny Hut or in this manner, as D&D involves a social contract of fun between the players at the table and the DM, and this combo can trivialize combat to the point of potentially diminishing the fun at the table. It's very similar to the Simulacrum loop It really does break the game, and so I think it should be avoided at all costs. The second exploit that's available to us is the one where, and it's the one that we'll focus on for this build, is having the user of the bead treated as the caster of the spell, so they can actually use their concentration instead of ours. As an example, if we give the bead to our familiar, we can use it to cast a spell like Hypnotic Pattern, which has a range of 120 feet, and then they can fly away out of most of harm's reach. Next up, both of our wizards will set up Glyphs of Warding. The spell glyph feature of the Glyph of Warding allows us to store a spell of 3rd level or lower, including spells that require concentration, within the glyph, and the spell is cast when the glyph is triggered. If the spell requires concentration, it lasts until the end of the glyph's full duration. For our glyphs, we will, like Batman with a load of prep time, we'll load a couple of Cloud of Dagger spells inside. Cloud of Dagger requires concentration and deals 4d4 slashing damage at level 2, and then 66 when cast with a 3rd level spell slot, when a creature enters the spell area for the first time or starts its turn there. So what spells should our actual wizards focus on? Well, how about we cast the 4th level spell Summon Greater Demon and summon a Balgara to the battlefield. I've highlighted the most important detail of the spell's description for our purposes. It says that the demon is able to make a charisma saving throw at the start of each of its turn. On a successful save, our control of the demon ends for the rest of the duration. We can then actually stop concentrating on the spell, and the demon stays on the plane uncontrolled for 1d6 rounds, as long as it still has at least a single hit point. Our main player character wizard can then cast and concentrate on a Wall of Force after it drops the Summon Greater Demon concentration. So this Wall of Force can cover itself in the Simulacrum to protect it from enemies and to protect it even from the Balgara that it summoned. The Simulacrum then can, using 3 sorcery, because it has 3 sorcery levels, it's going to have 3 sorcery points, and so it can actually use the twin spell to meta magic. We can then cast Twinned Haste on both Balgaras, transforming them from 2 great apes to 2 great golden Ozorus from Dragon Ball Z. So let's take a look at the battlefield and see how all of this would break down. In the words of Colby from D4 Deep Dive, we're interested in exploring what's possible in the best case scenario for concentration, not necessarily what's doable or even practical for your table. So we'll start with our wizard casting Simulacrum, and then both of the wizards will cast Foresight, and both will prepare Glyphs of Warding for the coming invasion of a Cobalt Army. Both our wizards will be flying Aarakocras, and their flying familiars will double cast Hypnotic Pattern. Let's say 2 kobolds trigger the glyphs, then we'll have 2 clouds of daggers up at a time. This gives us 4 concentration-like abilities with 2 flying characters and 2 foresights. It also gives us 4 concentration spells with 2 hypnotic patterns and 2 clouds of daggers. Both wizards will then cast Summon Greater Demon, and the Balgaras will ideally save on their charisma checks during their first turn. So I recognize that might not always happen, but again, for the case of best case scenario, we'll say that they save on their first turn. This gives us 2 more concentration effects without using our concentration. Our wizard will finally use their concentration to cast Wall of Force, and our Simulacrum will use Twin Spell Meta Magic to cast Haste on both Balgaras. This gives us a final total of 5 concentration-like spell effects. 2 for Flight, 2 for Foresight, and 1 more for the Twinned Haste, and then 8 concentration spells. So we've got 2 for Summon Greater Demon that we're no longer concentrating on, 2 from Hypnotic Pattern that our familiars are using, 2 prepared glyphs casting Cloud of Daggers, a Wall of Force, and the Haste spell. And that's it for this brainstorming session. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And I hope you all come back on Friday for my Itachi build. Thanks for watching.